Today I want to share everything that I wish that I knew about self-publishing before I did it. So if you're interested in potentially self-publishing a book, especially a poetry book, especially on Amazon KDP, this video will go through all of my frustrations and, more importantly, the lessons learned along the way and my final takeaways for advice and suggestions. So I can share this and make this video because my poetry book called Create and Receive, Make and Believe, Finding Peace Through Primarily Positive Poetry is now live on Amazon. Yay! I haven't received the copies yet, so I can only show you my proofs. And you know this is a proof because it has a giant line that says not for resale, but the book will more or less look like this, and I'm going to tell you how I got there. So I actually recorded another video where I was kind of ranting about one step in this process, so I'll link that if you're interested because it does give some tidbits and some mindset shifts that have helped me get through this. So first of all, I just want to start by saying if you're considering self-publishing a book, it's possible. It is totally possible. It is absolutely doable. Do not let yourself get overwhelmed. I put this off for so long because in my mind it would just seemed complex. It just seemed like too many steps. It seemed like too many logistics. And then it wasn't until I had this woman who had self-published call me and she broke down all of the steps and walked me through it. And I was like, okay, I can do this. It is tedious, I will warn you. It can be tedious at times, and it's totally possible, and people do it all the time. So I essentially, today with this video, I want to give you the breakdown that woman gave me, that gave me the inspiration and really the push to finally make it happen. And I promise you will feel so satisfied once it happens. So first and foremost, obviously you have to write your book. So we're going to assume that you already have your manuscript written. Now, if you haven't written it yet, here is something I wish that I had known before I even put together my book. I edited my poetry book in Google Docs the first time. And I did this and then saved it as a PDF so that I could send it to my mom to review because I wanted to get her opinion on it. But I did all of the formatting in Google Docs. I'm actually not sure why. I just picked that. And the thing about poetry is the spacing is very important and can get very time consuming because, especially for my poems, because they rhyme, I like to make sure there's indentations in a way that leads the reader through the rhythm that I have in my head when I'm writing it. A lot of poetry books are everything is justified or everything's to the left and there's no indentation, there's not a lot of spacing. And if you're writing a novel or a self-help book or some other type of book, spacing may not be a huge deal. But if you're doing poetry, just know you might spend a lot of time on that. And that was a huge time suck for me because I had to redo it multiple times, and I'll explain why and how to prevent it. So first of all, I did all my formatting in Google Docs as a draft. Then the woman that I spoke to recommended that I use a program called Atticus. And this is what I explain in that other video I just referenced that, again, I will link. Atticus is a formatting program that you can buy for, I think it's $150 for lifetime access, and you can have an unlimited number of books. Amazing, amazing program. It's fairly intuitive to use. My problem with Atticus is I spent a whole day reformatting all my poems. So I had to take them from Google Docs. I uploaded them into Atticus, but none of the spacing saved. So I had to go through manually and redo all the spacing. And my poetry book is 95 pages long, so it took a long time. I redid all the spacing and then I hit the preview and none of the spacing saved. And I was like, what? And long story short, I went back and forth on this for a while, finally got a hold of a person at Atticus, and she just point blank told me, we're not the best yet for poetry. And I think that's just because there's not as much room for specificity with the spacing. They have templates that they use. I think it's phenomenal for novels, for longer pieces of work, for longer text. And when I write a novel or a nonfiction book, I will certainly use Atticus, I think. But for poetry, I don't recommend it. Fortunately, they do have a 30-day money-back guarantee, so I was able to get a refund with no questions asked, so that wasn't a problem. But I could have saved myself a lot of time. So then in my frenzy of, okay, well, what do I do? How do I format this book? I did a little YouTube search and I found this girl who talks about how she formats and self-publishes all her books using Microsoft Word. And I will also link to her channel because she's amazing. And it was so helpful because she goes really in depth with the formatting and the specifics of the page setup, which I'll share a little bit of right now as well. So she recommended Microsoft Word. It was fairly simple for me to copy and paste everything from Google Docs into Word, and it kept most of the formatting. I did have to go through and do some tedious things, but what's really important is that you have your page set up with the correct dimensions before you start. I didn't. I had the standard letter size 8x11 in Microsoft Word when I started formatting the document. And then after I watched her video, I realized I need to change it because my book was going to be 6x9. So I changed it, and then I reformatted everything, redid the margins, redid all the spacing and the page breaks exactly how I wanted it. And then later I realized that I didn't save, so I had to go reformat it again. So I spent a lot of time unnecessarily re-spacing all of my poems, deciding which poems go on which page, where it's gonna break, etc., etc. So make sure you have the page set up and the margins exactly how you want them before you start, or as soon after starting as you can, to save yourself some time. Now, the exact dimensions that you'll need depend on the size of your book. And there's a way, I think you can just Google you can Google that question, what page setup in Microsoft Word for a book that is 9x6, for example. She shared it in the video, so if you are making a 9x6, you're gonna set your page to 6.3 by 9.25 inches. You need that extra little bit of space for the bleed, which is the runoff that doesn't actually get printed, but that goes to the edges of the pages. I couldn't actually figure out the page setup based on her video. My Microsoft Word interface looked a little different, so I had to go through the margins tab. So I hit margins, and then at the bottom of the custom margins, there's page setup. You click that, and then you can define the dimensions, and then make sure you click apply to whole document, and make sure that saves before you do all your edits. Just a word of warning. So you get your page set up, and then you adjust the margins. She goes more in depth in the video about what size margins you want. I honestly just kind of eyeballed it based on what I thought I'd want. Poetry is a little lower. There's not, my text doesn't go all the way to the edge, so I wanted some thicker margins. But the trickiest part of formatting my book personally was that in between some of the poems, let me make sure you can see, in between some of the poems, I have these paragraphs where I talk about the poems. So that also created some difficulty for me with the formatting, because it wasn't like a poetry book where there's just one poem per page. I have long poems, and I wanted these little paragraphs where I explain things as well. So it's kind of a different format, and you probably don't have to worry about that either. It's going to be these longer paragraphs or shorter poems, but in any case, you want to be aware of how wide your margins are and how you want them to look, as well as the font. I used font size 11 for the poems and font size 12 for the paragraphs, but we'll get more on sizing and how to tell what size you want in just a minute. So what I recommend for the manuscript itself is use Microsoft Word, or do it in Word and then upload it to Atticus. I did talk to a friend who also self-published before I did, and she was like, yeah, I use Google Docs. So if you don't have a Word subscription or Microsoft Office, use Google Docs, and apparently it works too. I'm not sure why I didn't. I found this girl on YouTube and she said Microsoft Word, so I said, okay, great, we're going with that. One tricky thing just to note, it automatically formatted a table of contents for me, which was great. And that was based on the headings I had in Google Docs. But in Google Docs, I had used the heading setting to make my own table of contents just for my personal reference. And so that somehow transferred to Microsoft Word. The thing to be aware of, though, is I didn't use heading for all of my poems. So there were certain poems that were left out of the table of contents that I had to go in and manually add. And that took a lot of time because it's really hard to edit the table of contents on Microsoft Word. So if you want a table of contents, I would suggest use consistent headings so that the table of contents recognizes which ones you're going to want included, because when you change it later, like even later when I changed the title of my poems, it didn't update the table of contents. And there may be deeper digging you can go to format it a little easier, but just a heads up. And the only reason I did a table of contents is because I read that that's necessary for ebooks, and I'm also going to make this into a Kindle version of the book. Haven't gotten there yet, but hopefully it'll just be a matter of transferring the document to that format. So all of that is the manuscript. I recommend using Microsoft Word, Google Docs if you want to, but just make sure that your page setup is how you want it. Make sure the margins are the correct size and your font and all of that will be the size that you want. Now, if you're not sure, I'm going to tell you in just a minute about the proof that you can get, which is essentially this. This is not my published book. This is not available to the public, but this is a proof that Amazon sent me so that I could preview and make sure I liked the spacing, make sure I liked everything before I sent it to go live. But I'll talk more about that in just a minute, because first I want to talk about the cover. So you've got your manuscript and that's all feeling good, and then you have to design your cover. Now, if you have a really simple cover, do it in Amazon directly. So in KDP, they have something called the Cover Creator. This is what I used the first time I did a proof. So I've ordered 2 proofs, and I'll show you both and the differences. But in Amazon Cover Creator, I just uploaded an image that I designed. Well, I originally designed a cover title in Canva, the cover page in Canva, and it was just graphics, but then I decided I wanted to do my own doodles. So if you want to do your own artwork, what I did was I drew on a piece of paper that I measured was 9x6. I drew it and then I uploaded it using Cam Scanner, and then I sent that file from my phone to my computer, and then I put that file in Canva, and then I added the title onto that file, and then I saved the image. And then I put the image in Amazon's Cover Creator. And then something to know, the back cover, you cannot add an image. You can, but they have little templates. So if you're gonna add an image, it has to fit in the box with their templates. So go explore the Cover Creator. But here's what I learned. That's what I did the first time. And then after I got my original proof, so this was the first one, and you can see there's like this space from the spine to the book, to the drawing, I mean. And that's fine, that didn't bother me. But I wanted to change the back cover because I didn't use a template for the back cover with images or anything. I just used this little text box, and it just seemed kind of plain. And I was like, I kind of want to add some drawings there. So I thought it would be simple to do in Amazon's Cover Creator. So I doodled the back page, and then I tried to upload it. And that's when I learned that you can't just upload a full-size image to the back page. You have to follow their template. So the other option, if you don't want to use the Cover Creator, is to create a PDF with your whole cover file. And that includes the front cover, the spine, and the back cover. To me, starting out, I was like, no way, that is way too difficult. That's above my competency level. But I ended up doing that, and it wasn't that hard. And I'm going to explain right now you can do it too. So what you're going to do is go to KDP cover template, and they, on that page for their cover creator template, something like that. But if you Google KDP cover template, you'll find it, and you can input the dimensions of your book. So my book was 6x9. And then you can input the number of pages. I'd already had a printed copy. I knew it was how many pages it was. 95 pages. I put 95 pages, and it told me the exact dimensions for the PDF, including the spine. This sounds more complicated than it is. It's not that complicated. So you're gonna go, and I'll also link the video that I used to help me to visualize. I'm not that tech savvy, so I'm not really sure how to put that on the screen right here. But essentially, you go get this template, and it will tell you what dimensions to put into Canva. If you're using Canva or whatever processor you're using, you can go to the page setup. So in Canva, I had to hit create new image, custom size, create new design, custom size, and then I input the size. It was 9 point something, and it was just a little bit over the 9x6, and you put that in, and then you download the template from KDP cover template, and that has your specific dimensions with all the edges that you need. And it outlines where the front cover will be, where the spine will be, and where the back cover will be. So you put that image on top of the template to see where things will fit. Now here's what costs me a lot of time. On that template, you're gonna see red lines, and then you're gonna see dotted lines, and then you're gonna see the edge. I was under the impression that the image could only go to the red line, and that beyond the red line, it was too far. So I spent a long time trying to format my cover in Canva with the template not going past the red line, and making sure everything showed up the way I wanted. So in this, you can see this little bottom thing got cut off, but I wanted it to show up, so I edited it, and I had a little bit more of space. So I ordered a second proof. Now it costs money to order a proof. Not a ton of money, it's just the printing costs. For me, it was $2.30 plus shipping, so it ended up being about $6 for me to order a proof. Because I was going from using the cover creator template, the cover creator directly in KDP, to using my own template with a PDF, I wasn't sure what it was going to look like. I didn't know where it was going to cut off, so I did pay for the extra proof. But going back to creating the cover, so you're going to put it in the template on Canva or whatever. Don't stop at the red line, because here is what cost me all the time, is I stopped at the red line, ordered the proof to make sure it would look good. I got this beautiful proof. I was like, it's perfect. That's exactly where I want it to cut off. It goes all the way to the edge. I have the back cover now. This was my back cover before. And then I have the back cover. It has to go around the barcode. So I had that all squared away exactly how I wanted it. So then I click submit. I was ready to order it, ready to go live. And then I got an email from Amazon the next day saying there was an issue with your cover, and the dimensions were incorrect. And I'm like, why did they send me a proof if the dimensions were incorrect? Something I have since learned is that the proofs do not undergo review. So you might get a proof and think, oh my gosh, everything's great. It looks beautiful. That doesn't mean it's good to go. So then I had to go reformat it. I submitted it again, and I kept getting the same error message. I chatted with someone, and she told me that my image had extended too far beyond the red line. And so first I had just gone to the red line, then I went to the dotted line outside the red line, and then she told me my image extended too far. So I fixed it, resubmitted it, and then, long story short, this happened 4 times, and eventually I got on the phone with someone, and she told me the woman in the chat was incorrect, and it actually was supposed to extend all the way to the edge, past the red line, past the dotted line. However, this is tricky because that portion past the red line may or may not print. Some of it will print, some of it won't. I'm actually not 100% satisfied with how my cover looks like it's going to turn out based on the little image in the order description, but we'll see when it gets here. But all of that is to say, make sure your file goes all the way to the edge, but give yourself a buffer on each side for what is called the bleed. The bleed is not printed, but for whatever reason, they make you include it on the PDF. So on the template, it's going to give you the impression that you're not supposed to go past a certain edge. Don't listen to that. Go past the edge. Go all the way past, all the way to the corners of the document itself. I was getting so frustrated and confused because they kept saying, go to the border, go past the border, go to the border. I'm like, which border? There are like 3 borders. There's a red border, there's a dotted line border, and there's a solid border. Which one? The ultimate edge of the document. But don't put anything important in those last few spaces because that may or may not get printed. And the reason I found this tricky is because I wanted this little thing here to be flush with the bottom, and there's a little gap. And in the final copy, there's an even bigger gap, but it was so tedious, and it was as close as I could get. I'm pretty happy with how it came out though. So one other little thing, in case you're curious, this is a matte finish cover, and this is a glossy cover. I wasn't sure which one I'd want, so I did a proof in each one, and I like shiny, so we're doing the glossy cover. So that's the cover. It can be tedious. If you have questions, if you're doing this, I am so happy to help you because I literally spent days, I'm not even exaggerating, like 5 hours a day trying to format my cover, and I kept getting it wrong, and it's just frustrating when you spend so much time on something and then realize it didn't even count. Another lesson from that story is call support. Amazon KDP makes it look like they don't have a contact page, like you have to just go through the forum, but they do. If you go through the forum and then click on your subject, and then at the bottom of the page it will say contact us, and you can do the chatbot or you can request a call. I first did the chat, got conflicting information, did the chat the next day, got more conflicting information, so I requested a phone call, and I thought it would take hours for them to call me back. She called me within 2 minutes. So pleasant, such a sweet conversation, and she told me exactly what I needed to do. So that is always something to keep in mind. We don't have to do this alone. There are people that work that want to help us. I know sometimes it feels like we can only get through to robots, but there are people who are very helpful. This woman, I started crying on the phone. I was so frustrated. She calmed me down. She told me exactly how to get there. And then 2 days later, I got the email from Amazon saying, good to go. Yay. So that's the cover. So once you get the manuscript and the cover all formatted, in KDP, you'll see a list of prompts that you have to fill out with the description of your book and your author name and all of that. Here are some logistic things to keep in mind that I had no idea about before I started this process. It's more of a financial investment than I had imagined, but it's worth it. It's your book. One is you're going to want to copyright your manuscript, and probably the cover too if it's original art, but you're going to copyright your book, and that in the United States as of May 2025 costs $65. If you do it online, it's pretty simple to do. You just go to the copyright website. I'm pretty sure if you Google copyright my book, it'll be the first thing you see. Make sure it looks like a legitimate site. Don't click on an ad. And you go through the process, you input all your information, and you copyright it. And that protects you, obviously, legally. The other thing to do is buy an ISBN number. Now, this is kind of a debate, so use your own discretion here. But here's the debate. Amazon KDP will give you a free ISBN number, so you don't technically have to buy one. The pro to buying your own is that then if you want to sell it somewhere else, so let's say you want to sell it in a bookstore or another online platform, you can do that. If Amazon owns your ISBN, to my understanding, I could be wrong about this, but the way it's been explained to me is that then you can only sell it on Amazon. The other thing to keep in mind is that any different versions of your book will need a new ISBN number. So you may want additional ISBN numbers just in case you need to make a separate edition of the book. So I've read that for an ebook you need a separate ISBN number, but I don't think that's true, because when I was looking at creating an Kindle version on Amazon, it said like ISBN is not required. So I don't know, do your fact checking on that. I'm not worried about an ISBN for my online version, but what I did in the United States, you can go to a website called Bowker, Bowker, and purchase ISBNs. Now you can buy one ISBN for $125, or you can buy 10 ISBNs for $295. Use your discretion. I went ahead and bought 10 because I know I'm going to write more books and then I will have them. So do your research. I did watch a lot of videos on, do I need my own ISBN or can I use Amazon's? And a lot of people just use the free one on Amazon. I got a little scared and I was like, I kind of want full ownership of this. So I went ahead and I bought my pack of 10 ISBNs so that I've got it ready, and the next time I write a book, I'll have it good to go. So then after you get all that sorted out, you'll get an email once it goes live to edit your Author Central page on Amazon. I'm sorry to tell you, I haven't been able to edit mine because I keep getting an error message from Amazon saying the site is down. It keeps saying, sorry, not available right now. It seems pretty straightforward. You upload your bio, you upload a photo, and there you go. Because of Amazon, I can't give you much more information on that, but I think it's pretty intuitive and straightforward. So then your book is ready. You're self-published. You've got your manuscript down, you've got your book cover, and you've got your copyright and your ISBN numbers. Now, one other thing to keep in mind, in that process, you will set your price for the book. I had a lot of fun going to KDP's royalty calculator. So you can play around with this and you can type in the cost, the potential cost, and it'll give you a breakdown of what the printing cost would be, what your royalty would be, so basically how much you would make from that. And there are a few other factors in there, I don't know what they are. But you can go to that royalty calculator and really get a good idea of how you want to price your book and how much Amazon will take from the book. Now, one thing I'm also learning is that you can order author copies at cost. So you order them for the printing cost. So for my book, for example, it's $2.30 plus shipping. So that does add a bit to it, and it comes out to be about $5 or $6 per book. But I'm selling my book for $14, so it actually seems to make more sense for me to try to sell them in person. I'll get more of a profit than if I sell it on Amazon, just based on what the royalty is. But have some fun with that. How you want to price your book, obviously totally up to you. So there we go. And one just note of encouragement. Again, I thought this process was going to be so difficult, and it did prove to be quite tedious, but not hard, and certainly not impossible. There's so many resources available, so trust yourself, have fun with it. If you need extra motivation, I have a free poetic pep talk available for download that can just get you in the mood and get you feeling inspired and get you ready to release your work to the world. And of course, if you're interested in checking out my book, you can find the link for that in the description. It was so fun, and I will say it feels so rewarding to hold your own work in your hands and have fun with it, because, it's gonna live on. Oh, and then one other thing that I didn't expect, now that it's ready and I've been sending people the link, I'm feeling all these feelings of insecurity and vulnerability of like, oh my gosh, wait, now they're gonna read it. So in the process, in the beginning, that's all we think about. It's like we're writing the words and we're like, oh my gosh, what are people gonna think of this? Or we're just writing for ourselves. But then, for me anyway, I got so bogged down with the logistics and the cover and the When I got my first proof, I had a million typos. So I was like going through the typos, but I was determined not to do any more editing of content because I was like, I committed to the content. I don't want to second guess myself. But now that it's out in the world, I'm like, oh my gosh, I should have changed this. I should have changed that. Maybe I shouldn't have put that poem there. I should have deleted that paragraph. I feel so vulnerable and like, oh my gosh, now people are going to read my words, my like innermost thoughts. And that's kind of scary. So all of that's to say, just be prepared. Those feelings might arise, but you did it. And you're going to be so proud once you did. If I could do it, you can absolutely 100% without a doubt do it. I have so much faith in you. And please send me a copy of your book when it's ready. Share this with anyone who you know is an aspiring writer, and let me know your own experience and if you have any additional tips that I neglected to include. Thanks so much for watching.